Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jane. Hey.
Good to see you.
Hi, there.
Just give about one more minute to let people still pop in.
Matthew, it's been a million years. How are you?
Whoa. Good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see everybody.
I'm just clicking that admit button over and over and over. There they come.
Wear out your thumb, huh?
Yeah. Couple more coming here.
Great. It's going to be a great group.
Mm-hmm. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, Ben.
We were saying hi to everybody one by one, but then it was just like too fast. Couldn't keep up.
And do you think we're ready to roll?
I think we are. Yeah, go ahead, Justine.
Well, welcome everyone. Hi, it's good to see everyone. I can't believe how quickly 2 weeks fly by from when we saw you 2 weeks ago. And of course, a lot has happened, as Maureen said. So we're going to spend some time today chatting about that and then move into the bulk of our time together with Scheidt and Xiaoan from Fetzer Institute, which I'm very grateful for them to give us some time to engage in conversations about creating a sacred space virtually. Before we do that, and before I pass it over to Jean, I just wanted to lift up a couple conversations that were happening behind the scenes about community calls. As we look into the next 2 months and even 2021, Ben and I and many parts and members of the Retreat Center collaboration spend time on thinking about what issues are emerging that we should talk about in community calls, how to create space for maybe pressing or urgent issues. And that's kind of what happened today. We held space and we talked about how do we talk about the election, and not even knowing where we were going to be today and this afternoon, a week after the US election. You know, we know the world was watching, but a lot of us felt pretty exhausted. And we still don't really know how we landed in a lot of ways. So we said, do we devote this community call to that? I called a couple of you and said, what do you think? And some said, I'm so exhausted talking about the election. I want to keep talking about the election. I don't know how to feel about it. And really what the thread through all of the conversations was, what do we do as retreat centers to start healing the divides within our nation, related to racial justice, related to politics, related to so many social justice issues? And to really have an intentional conversation and do it justice. We didn't feel like we could just throw that into the mix today. And I just think it's really important to be transparent about that conversation is upon us and should be. And I invite all of you to continue that conversation with us. We're also hoping to have that be a community call, but not where Ben and I just hold space and put you in small groups and have that, even though there's a lot of wisdom there within all of you. So my ask of you is, does that sound like a good idea? Is there a need for that in a community call, that topic of healing divides? And then I invite you to put someone forward, if it's yourself or a colleague, who would be wonderful at facilitating that conversation for us in a community call or in its own spotlight conversation. So you're welcome to email me, but you're also welcome to put that in the chat right now. But through the entire conversation, I welcome that feedback. And then I'll hand it over to Jean just to hold us in that space for a bit.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's so fun when people are coming on of new faces and people that are familiar faces to be with us. And it's just a pleasure to be here with all of you. My task this morning is to do just a bit of holding space for us and for just a time of meditation, but also a little bit of holding space for us as a community. So as we begin that, I'm going to invite us to just kind of get in a kind of a little bit of a comfortable position and take some like 3 good breaths through our nose, and to be mindful that we're here in this space at this time, and we're not where we just were in some other Zoom meeting or where we're heading for the next Zoom meeting. So let's together just take 3 nice deep breaths. I'm going to invite you to let your eyes gaze on the screen and to look at a name that you don't really know very well, a person that you do not know very well. And I'm going to invite us to sort of, I'm going to paraphrase a loving kindness meditation from Sharon Salzberg as we begin. And so as you gaze at them, may you give them this blessing. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, and live with ease. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, and live with ease. Now let your eyes gaze on somebody that you know. And bless them. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, and live with ease. Now turn inward. Sometimes it's the hardest thing to bless ourselves, right? May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, and live with ease. Thank you. So as we kind of form community and come together today, I chose one of my favorite readings from Congressman John Lewis. And it is a story of his childhood. And I'm going to read this to you, and we'll make sure to send it out so you all have it at the end. But I'm going to read this to you and ask you to reflect on 2 questions, and we'll break into pairs for just about 8 minutes, and then we'll come back as a group together. So for a moment, imagine it's in the 1940s, and you're in the South, and you're on a farm, actually, that's a sharecropper's farm. And this was where Congressman John Lewis grew up. And here is his story. Almost every neighbor we had in those woods was a sharecropper, and most of them were our relatives. Nearly every adult I knew was an aunt or an uncle, every child my first or second cousin, and that included my Uncle Rabbit and Aunt Savannah and their children, who lived about a mile or so up the road. On this particular afternoon, it was a Saturday, I'm most certain, about 15 of us children were outside my Aunt Savannah's house playing in her dirt yard. The sky began clouding over, the wind started picking up, lightning flashed far in the distance, and suddenly I wasn't thinking about playing anymore. I was terrified. I had already seen what lightning could do. I'd seen the fields catch on fire after a hit into a haystack. I'd watched trees actually explode when a bolt of lightning struck them, the sap inside rising to an instant boil, the tree swelling until it burst its bark. The sight of those strips of pine bark snaking through the air like ribbons was both fascinating and horrifying. Lightning terrified me, and so did thunder. My mother used to gather us around her whenever we heard thunder, and she'd tell us all to hush. Be still now, because God was doing God's work. That was what thunder was, my mother said. It was the sound of God doing God's work. But my mother wasn't here on this particular afternoon. Aunt Savina was the only adult around, and as the sky blackened and as the wind grew stronger, she herded us all inside. Her house was not the biggest place around, and it seemed even smaller, so with many children squeezed inside. Small and surprisingly quiet. All of the shouting and the laughter that had been going on earlier outside had stopped. The wind was howling now, and the house was starting to shake, and we were scared. Even Aunt Savina was scared. And then it got worse. Now the house was beginning to sway. The wood plank flooring beneath us began to bend. And then a corner of the room started lifting up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of us could. This storm was actually pulling the house toward the sky, with us inside. That was when Aunt Savina told us to clasp hands. Line up and hold hands, she said, and we did as we were told. Then she had us walk as a group toward the center of the room that was rising. From the kitchen to the front of the house, we walked, the wind screaming outside, the sheets of rain beating on the tin roof. And then we walked back in the other direction as another end of the house began to lift. And so it went, back and forth, 15 children walking with the wind, holding that trembling house down with the weights of our small bodies. More than half a century has passed since that day, and it has struck me more than once over these many years that our society is not unlike the children in that house, rocked again and again by the winds of one storm or another, the walls around us seemingly at times as if they might fly apart. It seemed that way in the 1960s, at the height of the civil rights movement, when America itself felt as if it might burst at the seams. So much tension, so many storms. But the people of conscience never left the house. They never ran away. They stayed. They came together and they did the best they could, clasping hands and moving toward the corner of every house that was the weakest. And then another corner would lift, and we would go there. And eventually, inevitably, the storm would settle, and the house would still stand. But we knew another storm would come, and we would have to do it all over again. And we did, and we still do, all of us, you and I, children holding hands, walking with the wind. That is America to me. Not just the movement for civil rights, but the endless struggle to respond with decency, dignity, and a sense of humanity to all the challenges that face us as a nation and as a whole. Congressman John Lewis. Ben's going to put 2 questions into the chat room that I'd like you to think about just for a minute. Whose hands are you holding these days? And how are you walking with the wind during these times? Ben's going to invite us into just pairs. And what I'd like you to do is just do what we call deep listening, which is just decide who's going to go first. And one person will speak for about 3 minutes. And then Ben will put a note up. And then it'll be the other person's turn to speak for about 3 minutes. It's not a time for conversation. It's just a time for us to speak out into public our own truth. Or as Nell Morton might say, to hear one another into speech. So thanks, Ben.
I have our pairs set up for 8 minutes. And I'm going to open the rooms.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Ben, good to see you again.
Here.
So Ben, I'll just welcome people back and then turn it back over to you, or turn it, or just turn it to Michelle and Xiao.
Michelle and Xiaoan can just run from here if that's comfortable with them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope that was a good experience for you and you had some good time together. It's a way to deepen like our relationships with one another when we do those practices together. If we had a longer time, you know, you might invite a group to write something in the chat about that experience, or you might invite people back into a whole circle and reflect on that experience a little bit. But right now, we're actually going to move forward, and Michelle and Xiaoan will welcome you to talk about how do you hold sacred space.
Thank you so much, Jean and everyone. It's really a pleasure for us to be here. And my colleague Xiaoan Li and I are both senior program officers at the Fetzer Institute. And we've been really honored to be in this dialogue about creating sacred space virtually over the past months, and we look forward to sharing a little bit about what we've learned, and also to inviting us into some conversations with each other to continue to deepen that learning. I know that I've met many of you. I haven't met some of you. At least one person is brand new to the group today. So I'd just like to invite everyone to put into the chat your name and where you're from, if it's a retreat center, the name of your center, and at least the geography where you're coming from today. So even though we're not going to take the time to go around and do deeper introductions, that would be a beautiful thing. And at least we can do a little tiny bit of introduction in a sense of the gathering here together from many places across North America. So I'll just invite you to leave your chat open for a minute and just take a moment to scroll through that on your own, just to get a sense of who's coming together here in this room today.
We also have some new faces joining in, so welcome to folks who are just coming onto the call. For everyone who's just coming on, if you could just put into the chat your name, if you're from a retreat center, the name of the center you're from, and the geography that you're joining from today. And then just take a moment to scroll through that and appreciate who's coming together here today.
Thank you, Michelle. Welcome once again. I'd like to quickly introduce myself again. My name is Xiaoan. Just in case you're wondering, how should I pronounce his name most correctly? It's Xiaoan, originally from China. Joined Fetzer 9 years ago. It's been a wonderful 9 years working extremely close with Michelle and many others actually on the call today. Thanks to Jean that was that was beautiful meditation. Interesting that because otherwise I also had a little meditation in mind without knowing that Jane's capable hands are here. But Michelle, if you don't mind, if you can share the slide, and I will take it through a very brief form of meditation. So we are officially part of this presentation. So the presentation is with the purpose to share some of the beautiful learning Michelle and I have been leading after having conversation with 40+ leaders in this field of holding space for others. And I went through all of you, where you're coming from, feels like we are largely in the same field of once again creating that space. And I trust that you probably, while Michelle's still working on the slide, I would like you to invite the image of the physical retreat center that maybe you have been working for a long time. I bet you miss it. Or otherwise, if you're not in the retreat center or business, bring the image of a place that you had a profound experience. Just pause for a second, just bring the image of that place into your awareness. And try to remember, it seems so far away now. What's the smell? Remember the trees outside the building? There must be some water that is close enough. The birds, the sound, the singing, the changes of the seasons. Gosh, I miss all that. Well, Michelle, if you can show the slides of the seasons. Now, if you close your eyes, then open your eyes to see this picture. Please understand, I actually have been tears in my eyes right now. This is the picture of the Seasons Meeting House, a most beloved retreat center on Fetzer's campus. You see there's a wall of window. You see trees after trees outside. You see there's a circle of empty chairs. They feel lonely. Their greetings and calling us to go back. "10-second silence just to bring that image with your own. Then gently come back to this virtual circle and keep this image, okay, please keep this image in your awareness as we go on with the presentation. Now, Michelle, would you please introduce, the context, the background, why Fetzer, decided to do a series of virtual convening. Michelle, please.
I'd like to just leave this picture of the Seasons Meeting House up while I talk a little bit about Fetzer's past history as a convener and a holder of sacred space. Many of you on the call have been in this room. Many of you have not. And all of you have a sense from what Xiaoan just invited us into as to how that sacred space is held and is so much a part of the physical spaces where we all work and live. the Fetzer Institute opened Seasons 25 years ago. And over those 25 years, we have really, really had a very deliberate and intentional focus on creating and holding space in a unique way, as many of you are doing at your own centers. And we've had countless different gatherings, retreats, convenings over the years, really trying to foster deep connection, take care of the whole person. Those of you who have been at Seasons know that that woods is a very nurturing place. The meals are wonderful. The circles of people are wonderful. The architecture of the building, the woods, the landscaping, the circles, the beauty. It's very aptly named Seasons because in every season it has its own special quality. So all of these things come together in what we think of as sacred hospitality. And it's a recognition that all of our guests are spiritual beings and that we're trying to create the space for them to do the work that they're there to do. And it's something that's very important and central to our work, as it is for many of you. And obviously the pandemic has forced all of us into a different kind of space, this virtual space that is very different, and it's a huge shift for all of us in the way of working. And so as we've been making that shift, we've been thinking about how can we do what we do at Seasons in this space? How can we help create the deep relationships, the connecting, that sacred hospitality that is so important to us at Seasons? How can we create that sacred space in the online environment? And I know you have all been struggling with those same questions. And Xiaoan is going to share a little bit about the process that we've been through over the past months, and then we'll move into some of the learnings from that process.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, indeed. As soon as we kind of started working from home, second week of March, and the community member that, we used to meet, 3 hours every Tuesday morning, the whole community meet and talk. And then we just miss that time being together as Seasons. Then if we expand that awareness into Kalamazoo community, for example, we have heard a lot, the crying need from students and the teachers. They're struggling with, they're dissatisfied with the quality of virtual teaching and learning. So it feels like there is emerging question. How can we really make the virtual space more meaningful as a place of deep connection? After many conversations internally, including our trustees, they raised this question. Hey, Fetzer is a recognized name in convening. Then what is the most appropriate role Fetzer should play during this extremely difficult and a transitional period of time? Then Michelle and I were approached to lead this body of work. We reached out to 44, I think, in order to be very diverse. That was, once again, just so you know, we were very intentional about having a very diverse representation from different sectors. We talked then different fields, disciplinary approach, and ethnicity, racial, and faith, and all different communities. Every single people we invited came back to us overwhelmingly positive. So eventually we have 44, which is right in front of you. I want to honor all the participants by allowing you to just pause here to read through the names. I bet you should, if haven't, a few names are very familiar to you. Many organizations are considered leaders in this field. So we have a series of 4 virtual convening, 90 minutes each. And then really with roughly 12 people in each group, we invite a virtual and graphic designer to document, which we're gonna show you. And she did a fantastic job capturing and documenting some of the highlights and beautiful points there. So we built one after the other. We use fairly the same process, the same sets of questions. And fundamentally, 3. Question number 1. What tools, methods, and practice help nurture sacred space in virtual gatherings? What is the role of spiritual and contemplative practice in creating sacred space virtually? And question number 3, what strategies foster relationship building in an online environment? So these 44 individuals, along with Fetzer participants, went through this process. Then we just heard over and over again, many common thread of themes and best practices emerged. So with that being shared, Michelle and I will rotate and walk you through 5 larger themes that we believe are, once again, over and over again shared by many participants. Michelle gonna share with the first one, which is how to connect through physical spaces. Michelle, please.
Thanks, Xiaoan. This next slide was made by the graphic facilitator that joined us in the sessions. And I know many of you have experienced graphic facilitation in person, and a few of you have experienced it in the online environment. It was another thing we were experimenting with because we often use graphic recording in our meetings at Seasons to help capture capture in real time the ideas in a visual way. And our graphic recorder, Rana Alexander, really, she was able to adapt and bring in new tools and learn to do this in the virtual space. So this is just one example of some of the materials that she produced in real time during the sessions. But we have here, which you can see in the green boxes, 5 different themes. And we're just going to go through and share a few highlights in the themes as to what people surfaced as best practices. And this is kind of a synthesis of all 4 of the conversations. And this first thing is about physical space. And Rana described it as connecting through seasons. And you can see she's representing that same photo here. For us, this was really important to hear people talking about the ways to integrate the physical space where you are as a part of the meeting. It's one of the reasons why I asked you to put your geography into the chat today, because it's a way of recognizing that even though we're not in the same physical space, we are all in some physical space. And there are ways to bring that in and help people connect across that. We had several people in these conversations said, oh, well, we want to see you doing this group, and we want to see you in Seasons, not in your house, because it would bring Seasons into the gathering. Another similar example is one of the participants was talking about attending online worship services during the pandemic. And they mentioned how different it was when the worship leader was in the worship space versus when the worship leader was leading the worship service from their home. And so it got us to thinking and talking more about what physical space has to do with it, and how can we find ways to more deliberately bring the physical space into the online gathering, even though we're all in different physical spaces. So sometimes that can be by doing physical things, like I've invited people to show the room that they're in or to show something from the room that they're in. Sometimes we do land acknowledgements, or we go around and have several people in the group do land acknowledgements to show that we're coming from multiple geographies and bringing those together. Other things are just inviting people to maybe step outside and take in the natural environment. Just seeking ways to bring the physical space into the virtual world that we're in together. So that's number 1. Xiaoan is going to talk about the second one, which is quite similar and connected, about bringing in things that are real.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, if you look at the up right corner, you see there's a donkey. I think that's a donkey, right, Michelle? Yeah, ways to bring in the real.
I think it was actually a llama.
Okay, a llama. Okay, I got it. Yeah, that's a llama. Excuse me. So we all understand after just a couple of days, if not several weeks into the virtual everything virtual, people realize it's just not the same. Okay, let's just be real. Okay, what does that mean though, right? It's not the same in terms of what's missing. At the same time, what's arising? If you frame that as opportunity, but feels like there's been best practices for some experienced facilitator, the capacity to bring something real, because people feel that's what's missing. My personal favorite in terms of discussion is, it's a golden opportunity for us to break down the perception, the unnecessary duality that we perceive and create for ourselves, you know, what's considered physical versus what's considered not physical. It's all the perception. Would you agree? Well, the participants shared, for example, if we see this, the whole world as an energetic field, which means whatever that's flowing within our body radiates naturally out and making connection with others. The whole planet is an energetic field. John Fetzer strongly believed that was the case anyway. Then, and also if we are able to break down that barrier, seeing the relationship can extend it rather quickly. And, you know, with people meeting virtually. But anyway, we'll just walk through a few examples to help you understand what people have actually talked about. First of all, they feel invite people to engage in all 5 senses are more important than ever before. It really just bring all 5 senses to become a better observers, a deeper listener. And integrate the mind, body, and the soul, an energetic field to observe and to be present that way. Because we need to watch the nonverbal cues. Otherwise, that's what's missing. Then sometimes people feel if everybody have the same touchstone, for example, the same group consensus that really live and leaning onto those will help as well. People can be very creative. If we cannot come together to share the same meal, but can we bring the apple or bring your favorite meal, and we have a meal virtually as one of the most basic human needs and desires. And otherwise, how about light a candle? The candle, the traveling of the light, the energy. So there has been some wonderful ideas. I think we will run, you know, exhausting list, but anyway, the effort to bring what you perceive as real but shared by all others, to bring them together virtually can help people break down that unnecessary barrier. I will just pause here. There's so much more, but Michelle, why don't you share in terms of when it comes to preparation and follow up, and there's so much can be done before and after any gathering can help the quality of connection as well. Michelle, please.
Thanks. I'll just make a comment about the llama because I thought it was actually quite cute. One of the participants talked about bringing into one of their virtual retreats a virtual petting zoo. They contracted with an organization that had llamas, and they brought the llamas, of course, virtually on screen, and had some semi-interactive fun activities with the llamas. So that was one of the more unique ones I heard, and you can see the graphic recorder picked up. You all know as facilitators that preparation and follow-up are key aspects of leading a group, whatever that preparation and follow-up might be. But what participants in these gatherings really seem to be saying over and over again is that the preparation and follow-up are even more important in the virtual space, because usually our sessions are shorter virtually because it's easier on us, but because the session itself is shorter, what we do outside of the session becomes even more important and allows to build on and expand the time that we have. So some things that I know you're all experiencing and many of you are doing as well are about what do you send people ahead of time? What do you invite people to do ahead of time? Whether it's reading, listening, watching some material that's going to inform the conversation, whether it's sharing a box of those physical artifacts. Some people send snack boxes. For one of our gatherings, we sent out a little booklet that we use at seasons. That's a reflection on the 4 seasons. And then during the gathering, we had some reflections that were based on that little book, and everyone had the same book. So it created just a common thing for us to share. Quite a few other things that you've probably seen or you will see in the report that we pulled together, but is really about what do we do before and after, and how can we deliberately attend to what we do before and after the gathering in order to maximize the time that we have together and find ways to go deeper, whether it's through social time together on Zoom, music playlists, just recognizing that as facilitators, attending to these pieces are even more important in the virtual space than they are in person. And that leads us into the item in the center that is about holding space. And in this one, the participants shared a variety of ideas about how to do that in new and creative ways. Xiaoan.
Thank you, Michelle. Holding space is right in the center for a reason. It's because for us as a facilitator, the capacity, ability to hold a space is considered such a critical skill, particularly during difficult times. Because we're basically asking people, this is a big ask, to be honest, ask people to let go whatever came with them, be fully present. We ask people to open the heart and trust each other, doing so virtually. Wow, think about it. Think about, a lot of times because after many years of working as a facilitator, we might tend to forget this is a big ask. I like Michelle's spouse actually told me, they say, if there's a higher demand, we better have higher support. Then that higher support comes down to this very notion and the practice of how we can really hold a space that people feel sense of permission, feel safe, well, relatively term, or otherwise feel open to be themselves. I made a point, just a moment ago, and the barrier in terms of whether or not this is considered physical or non-physical, that actually suggests opportunity if we can share this out with the participant up front. Doesn't matter what kind of format. If the intention is to invite the whole being, the whole self into a space, the format does not necessarily matter as important or as much as the intentionality. So when it comes to holding space, there are just so many things that we can do. And for a facilitator, we need to be the one who first open our own hearts. That we have the permission to be vulnerable. A lot of times as a facilitator, that we go first by sharing our own life story first. That normally determines the depth and how far the participant is willing to go. And sometimes it helps if we, with opening contemporary practices like Jean just beautifully led, or otherwise knowing there is a power within the ritual, the music, even the silence. It's totally fine. We invite different forms of participation, sometimes maybe just silent listening. Touchstone, I have to talk about the touchstone again. You're probably familiar with Center for Courage and Renewal, Parker Palmer, The Circle of Trust. They authored a beautiful, long list of what we say are framed as touchstones. if we abide as a group consensus to those, people really can build the sense of trust almost instantly. So once again, I'm going to just pause here because there is a more logistic side of things in terms of practice in creating a safe space when it comes to a size matters. You know, there's a magical number of 6, no more than 8. People feel like the fewer people feel more willing to share. And the time, I'm zoned out all the time, you know, but it helps me a lot if it's much shorter, if there is a break in between, if there is just a recognition from the practitioner say, I understand you must be tired right now. Let's just pause a little bit. That all helps a lot. Once again, for us to be real, to be humane, and what normally is the best invitation we can send out. And Michelle will close us out with the 5th thing, which is really a lot of engagement opportunity there. Michelle, please.
One of the pieces of this that I found really interesting about the engagement opportunities is just actually learning to maximize what the platform you're using has to offer. You know, Zoom has been adding new little features as we go along. The reactions, for example. And it's really, as facilitators, or if you're able to have a person who's the tech person who's really minding the details, like Ben has been doing for us in this meeting, of managing the small groups, managing the PowerPoints, or if there's music or other details, but to really learn how to use the capacities in their fullest, the polling, not just the small groups, but in Zoom, we have the opportunity to do polling, we have the reactions, we have stamping, variety of things that it's worth just playing around with it, so you can really learn and feel really more comfortable with what the platform itself has to offer. And then experimenting with the different platforms too, because most people are using Zoom, but other platforms like GoToMeeting and Teams, they have their advantages as well. Couple of ideas that people suggested that I thought were really interesting. One was about sort of taking the temperature of the group on energy and just inviting people to put in the chat box, on a scale of 1 to 5, where do you feel like you are right now with energy level? And then it can just help us as facilitators to kind of know what's going on and be able to tailor the rest of the session accordingly. Also bringing in physical activities, embodied practices, having people turn their camera on or off for different things. Just learning to play with the technology more. It may be inviting people to change their name in the middle of the session based on something that might be going on in the content of the group. So part of it is kind of like the preparation and follow-up thing, that a lot more deliberate attention can help us get a lot further. Some people in groups that I've been working with are inventing new sign language signals, for example, or using rituals in different ways, as we've done a bit in this group. So those are just a few of the things. And we know that you all likewise have been experimenting with all of these things and many more. And so we just want to create some space for conversation around that. And we're gonna break into small groups for about 17 or 18 minutes. And here are a few questions that might help seed the conversation. You may not need it. You may just have things rising to the top already, but just a few questions to think about in the small group, and we'll also paste this into the chat. Just from the things that we've shared so far, what resonates with your experience or what doesn't resonate with your experience? What are the specific tools that you're using? What are the things that you're finding success? And where are the places where you're maybe finding some pitfalls? So just so we can learn a bit from each other and have a little bit more conversation on this. I'll ask Ben to send us off into our small groups.
All right. I have 6 small groups, about 4 people. I think there's a couple groups of 5. So I'll see you all in 17 minutes.
Well, welcome back, everyone. That time rather flew by. But we do have a few minutes to kind of continue that discussion with each other and maybe bring some insights back into the larger group. So for about the next 10 minutes or so, we'll just have open conversation. Maybe there are comments, maybe there's questions for each other or things that may just be rising to the top for you. And you can just jump in.
Or maybe because your time was cut short, you didn't get to answer. This is wide open for you. Or actually, Michelle, you and I talked about this. For this 10 minutes or so, I'm personally curious to hear from you. Yes, you're representing a specific retreat center, a specific well-established methodology. You do have your choir you reach out to. But if you jump out of that role, think about there's an enormous demand from the world, which means there's a field and a movement that is taking place right now. How can we do a better job collaborating? And maybe that's one of the questions.
Maybe we can start by defining what it means to collaborate and how people might have different understanding of what that might mean, and the approach that people take to get to that point where they collaborate might be different based on either the individual or the retreat center.
When thinking about collaboration, I oftentimes think of the shared measurements or the evaluation component that comes along with it, because each one of us has programs that we run from our retreat centers, but it would be interesting to find out certain items that could be measurable amongst all of us. You know, maybe there's something to say about power in numbers.
I think the quietness you hear is not a quietness of not knowing how to answer the question, but just kind of pondering on some of this. I love the invitation to think globally with each other and the collaboration of that. I don't have a response, but I just want to say I love I love the question to see how we can move towards that global collaboration.
I want to link back actually comments from our small group, Margarita, from some of your experiences. And when I think about collaboration, I think about the core of relationship building, and which is complicated in these times. And so, kind of reflecting on this conversation about virtual convening, what are the ways in which we can be cultivating and sort of fostering some of those deeper relationships that can be the foundation for collaboration. And if it's okay, Margarita shared, for example, one of the ways they're kind of building sort of intentional building community is just having like coffee before a planned session, right? Just that open invitation to be in dialogue without the agenda. And so often our time on Zoom gets so programmed.
I think one of the things that Zoom has brought to us is this exciting opportunity for collaboration in a way that we never ever dreamed of. And so I agree with Margarita, we're sort of sitting here pondering a little bit, Joanne, about the question that you raised. But I think it brings an opportunity to think larger on larger scales and with a wider vision than we ever dreamed of alone. And so many retreat centers have been so isolated and so alone and small in their leadership. That's not true for everyone, but it keeps us from thinking much more globally. And I think there's a huge opportunity. I would love to have a discussion about that, Ben and Justine, with a community call. I mean, let's just, dream it out of the box of what it is we would try to just put on the wall and see what sticks and what gets people excited. But we do cross the country, right? We cross actually North America, and we go all the way out here to Tatamagouche, Nova Scotia. And it's an opportunity to learn about what's happening in Nova Scotia that we will never get in our press. But then how does that relate to who we are, and how does that relate to, I mean, there's so many opportunities. I find it extraordinarily exciting.
One of the things that I've encountered is the devil is in the details about collaboration. We just had the mandala the other night from my sister's artist in Falls Church, Virginia, and it was very beautiful. But then who pays who for what, and who keeps track of all that at a time when we do need to have revenue coming in. We're also having a grief counselor from our local hospice, which is another form of collaboration. But again, he wants to do it pro bono because that's part of their work. But I've tried to reach out to even our 2 Florida retreat centers, but it's hard to get down to what do we actually do? If we put them on our website, do we get any, I mean, I don't mean to be selfish about it or not go with our abundance theme we had several months ago, but I think that would be the meat of a conversation for me about collaboration is, how do you really make it? I see some heads nodding, so I'm not the only one.
Thank you, Maureen, for expressing that. I think that's what I was trying to get at there at the beginning with defining what that means and the different approaches to be able to get there. I like the way you verbalized that, probably a little bit better than I did, so thank you for that.
I get a signal to say we need to close this in 2 minutes. So can we invite one more? Then we do have a little closing on our end.
I just want to jump in to say this is my first time with the group, and I verbalized in my small group that I was overwhelmed by the volume of information, but I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, wow, this is kind of genius. And so I look forward to the ripening of the genius. And thank you both to our co-presenters.
Thank you, Liz.
A couple of people have expressed some questions about collaboration. There's a really good little illustrated book out there called The Collaboration Handbook, Creating, Sustaining, and Enjoying the Journey. And it's quite a few years old, but it's got some really good material in it that differentiates collaboration from other forms of engagement. It's got some good hints in it if you're interested. And it's written like a comic book, so that makes it helpful too.
Thank you so much, Michelle, Liz, and all all of you for your deep listening. Michelle and I feel absolutely privileged and humble, able to share this body of work. Just so you know, there's every intention from the Fetzer side as a private foundation. Keep asking the question, what is the role that we should and we ought play? And so that work will continue. I shared that we had 4 and we're planning to have more. So if we missed you for the first 4, then you are invited for our future convening, fairly the same, but we are trying very hard to incorporate the feedback we have received from you today. The idea is, it's not necessarily, of course, this will benefit Fetzer community in terms of how we can better being with each other. More so, we're constantly asking this question, how we can serve the world better. So a continued number of convenings being planned. Then also, Michelle, you reference on the book. Michelle and I are thinking about putting a good effort, maybe a volume of best practices and invite somewhat unique approach and put them together through scholarship based on research. We feel a wonderful question about what if we invite scientific design research really to do assessment and evaluation, so we know more than just anecdotal self-reporting, is rather based on research to say we are making a difference in terms of human and community transformation. So research is already been thought about through a form of book, maybe convening or gathering of this kind. Then also, knowing there's a need to connect the tissues. We have the retreat center collaborative, which is beautiful already. How can we work more closely with this and to meet the needs that is really tangible and out there? And also, just so you know, whatever that Michelle and I shared today is already included in a nicely good looking report. Would love to share that with you guys. And maybe Ben and Justine, you can help share. You can actually find that report on Fetzer.org. Justine, you are really the best. You beat me on that. So if you click the link, you will see the report. And we're thinking about, once again, it's not necessarily self-attached, rather, best practices from you guys, from Fetzer, from others. How can we make them available? Because there's so many individual organizations still struggling and say, we are not satisfied with the quality virtually. Help us, help me. I think the calling is on all of us. The responsibility is a shared one. Feel free to send us any important follow-ups. And Michelle and I are gonna type our email address in the chat. If there's anything you want to follow up, any suggestion you want to make, or even say, can we go to the next Fetzer convening? Send those to us. And before, the last thing I want to share once again is such a pleasure to be in the space with you guys. And we will be back. Anything you want to add to it, Michelle?
Just thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
So, Ben and Justin, I know you want to close this, right? You have a business announcement to make.
Yes, Diana is also here on the call. And as we sort of ended with some talk of research and best practices and moving together forward, and even some of Emily's comment there of how do we match up? How do our identities match up? Our strengths match up? Diana has developed a survey, and she's going to share some about that will help us get the pulse of what's going on with our community now at this point in the year.
Unmute. So the community has grown a lot. So we are a total of how many, Ben, how many individuals and how many centers?
I think as of this morning, it's about 215.
Wow.
So it's growing, and we really want to take a pulse of the community. So the core work of the RCC is about weaving connections and being in service to retreat centers individually and collectively. And we really want to get a better picture of what's going on with you individually and collectively. So to that end, we've put together a survey intended for folks at retreat centers that are a part of this community, all of you, to learn some basic information, first of all, about your centers, and then to dig into a little bit about the current state. How are you doing now? What has been the impact of COVID? And then lastly, to get a sense of how you've been engaging with the RCC, what's been more or less helpful, and where, what are some of your priorities and ways in which the RCC could be helpful going forward. So it's 3 parts. We've had a few folks take it, and it's taken anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes to take. So I would say conservatively hold a good solid 20 minutes when you take it. We'd be very just appreciative of your time in doing so. Would love to hear back from you by soon after the Thanksgiving holiday. By December 3rd, you will be getting more reminders from us. They're going to keep on coming. We really want to get a good response rate, and we're committed to sharing back with all of you what we learn. So the link is in the chat, and it'll also be coming through an email. So thanks in advance for taking the time to take the survey.
Thank you, Diana. I'm excited about the survey. I love getting a better picture of who we are as a community, and I think that will be helpful not just for us as I try to coordinate or as some of us try to determine our next steps, but it'll be helpful for the whole group, for us to see each other as we are and learn about the connections that we've built and where we might help each other. So I think there's a lot of shared value there. I'll be sending out the survey invite in an email as well, so you'll get it later on today as well. All right, thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Hello, hi.
Michelle, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to just have more, more time, but we'll share, continue to share back with the group and invite folks to join the conversation.
I love Xiaoan's sort of promise, like we're going to be back.